Describe the Philly scene in the '80s. What was that like?
Well, I mean, when we started to play shows, the Milkmen did. I joined the Milkmen in 1983, and we started playing shows. Um, it was an interesting scene because there were lots of all ages hardcore shows with hardcore bands coming through town, basically booking their shows through the back pages of Maximum Rock and Roll. And uh, we were friends with the guy who booked shows, Chuck Meehan, booked shows here, and his shows were great because he wasn't afraid to mix it up a little bit. Like we weren't really a hardcore band, and we never were, but we were on these bills with hardcore bands, and that's how we got our start. Uh, so I think it was great that Philadelphia kind of welcomed all kinds of different styles, and there were straight up hardcore bands and there were popular bands and guitar based bands. And then I guess in the late 80s, I was in a band called Baby Flamehead while I was in the Milkmen at the same time. We were, I believe, one of the first kind of acoustic rock bands or, college rock bands in Philadelphia or anywhere. That band did one album. And so it was very varied, very friendly. We played shows where, you could get a dollar off your ticket price, which was probably only $3 or $4 if you brought a can of food for the homeless and that kind of thing. So, um, and then, we played those shows for a few years, and then we scraped enough money together to get an album together and put it out in 1985.
Yeah.
And and then we too booked our shows all over the country using the back pages of Maximum Rock and Roll.
And so, was there a problem? I mean, it was you guys always clearly had a sense of humor about the music. Everything was a little tongue in cheek. Did that fit in with the Philly scene? Or were you looked as like a one off, or just kind of when you take
I
it?
mean, I don't think there's anybody else out there like us. But we definitely had a good response. We made like a demo tape in my parents' basement where we rehearsed at the time, and we gave it to the University of Pennsylvania radio station, who had very freeform programming, and all the DJs were college students back then. Um,
Was it WXPN?
yeah, WXPN, and they played I guess they played Bitch and Camaro one night, and it just took off. They would play it quite often on the punk rock shows, and we were kind of freaked out the first time we played a show after that because all the crowd knew all the words to the song already. So it was like, wow, this is pretty weird. So I think people liked it. They enjoyed a laugh, and we had a good we had our own unique sound, and I think it went over pretty well.
It's funny you call it, or it's been called pop punk or punk pop, right? But that's
I
I
mean,
you
that's taken off as sort of its own genre since
yeah.
we've been around. Even after we kind of took our break, I think that came to the fore in the 90s, really. Um, Joe, our guitar player, played with a clean guitar sound, which a lot of punk bands didn't do. So maybe that's why it was called that.